the AllThingsXR podcast, where you can get the best AR VR analyzers from the biggest names in the field. Hi everyone, welcome to the AllThingsXR podcast. I'm Mojtaba. In today's episode, we talk about designing and prototyping in AR with our special guest, Paul Reynolds, founder and CEO at Torch 3D. Hi, Paul.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Sure. Can you tell us more about yourself and your company, Torch 3D?
Yeah, so I have been working in interactive 3D experiences for 20 years. Much of that was in the video game space, doing a lot of engineering. Later on in later years, I got into mobile development and had also done a lot of interactive 3D non-game type products. And in 2012, I got into augmented reality a little too early, but I was very fascinated with it. And then in 2014, I joined an augmented reality company called MagicLeap. I joined.
Interesting.
You may have heard of it. I joined fairly early.
Yeah.
The company had been around since 2011 or so, but it was still around 50 to 100 people. So I was under 100 people when I joined. And we helped take some very impressive kind of laboratory-based technology, mostly in the optics side of things. And we were some of the first people to help figure out how does this technology become a product, and what are the experiences, and what are the use cases for this new technology. And I did that for almost 3 years. I wound up, when I left on great terms. I'm still friends with the company. I'm still a shareholder. But when I left, I was senior director, and one of my teams was the SDK team. So we worked a lot with third parties, and I also worked a lot with internal teams, helping them create applications, experiences, and build useful things for this new crazy hardware. It was during that time I got the insight that ultimately became the catalyst for Torch. And the insight was 3D computing is coming, spatial computing, immersive computing, whatever your favorite term is for it. We as a society are ready to move beyond screens. I believe we've exhausted most of the advantages out of modern day kind of screen-based computing. And so helping people transition into a 3D or a spatial or contextually aware computing environment, getting the consumers is also going to be a challenge. But the first challenge is getting product people and designers working directly with this technology, because it's not the engineers and the people behind the scene that will turn this into useful products. It's the product people that will. So
exactly,
I saw the opportunity to make working in 3D more accessible for the creative class of people, experienced designers, user experience designers. And I saw it as bigger than just a MagicLeap issue or an augmented reality issue. I saw the same challenges happening in VR, and I thought we had a pretty good idea of how to solve it. And so that's what we're building at Torch.
Great. So actually, if I understood correctly, you're providing AR VR tools for creators. But how do you think these tools will democratize AR content creation? And what is your target audience actually?
Yep, that's a great question. So I would clarify. There's a lot of companies that are focused on the actual democratization of creating in 3D, meaning they're building solutions that anyone could build some sort of really simple VR, AR, or combination experience using their limited tool set. Where we're different is we believe, and this has been true even since the desktop computing days, that the really compelling products that consumers will really want are still built by a team of product professionals. So while anyone could potentially create a VR or AR experience using, all these great new tools that have come out. What we're focused on is how do we get all the people that have made mobile great and that have made desktop great and web great. How do we get those people applying their skills into 3D? So we're a more professional oriented tool, and we
Mm-hmm.
acknowledge that, and it's actually a platform. So it's a platform for collaboratively working on 3D ideas with a team of creatives and stakeholders and engineers. And our primary focus is in the prototyping side of things. So, in other words, if I'm a user experience designer and I have a really successful mobile application, and I want to figure out how can I integrate AR into my product. I first want to be able to uh, iterate and explore what's possible with these new technologies. And so I want to test out what would be something that I could do. But me being a creative professional, I don't want to just use, I wouldn't use necessarily like Snapchat, for example, as a way of
Uh-huh.
prototyping my ideas, right?
Yeah,
It
exactly.
doesn't really cater to that type of control or to that professional use case. So I'd say that's the
Mm-hmm.
biggest differentiator. We are kind of in that space of making 3D accessible and democratizing it to some degree. But we feel like the biggest contribution we could do to this new revolution in computing is getting all these existing really talented product people in 2D being able to actually access these 3D technologies, and we think those people will actually find the quote unquote killer applications or the must have applications of all this new technology. So that's really our big goal, is to unlock 3D computing through professional designers and experienced designers.
Great. So, unlike Facebook or Snapchat, that they have a central application and you must go with their application, you let designers and creators create AR in their own app. Am I correct?
Yeah, so what it is we actually utilize augmented reality in our product as a way to make working with 3D objects very intuitive. So in other words, we have a mobile AR application, and people can build multi-object, multi-scene interactive experiences for the purposes
Mm-hmm.
of testing out ideas, presenting ideas, and collaboratively building those ideas. So, in other words, let's say I have an idea for a new augmented reality experience, and I pull in some assets from different sources. Maybe I have some of my own. Maybe I pull in some from Sketchfab or Google Poly, and I arrange those in a scene. And I actually invite you as a peer of mine to come in and also work in the same project, and you can do that at the same time. And augmented reality makes this a shared space experience. And then let's say you and I brainstorm and we create this nice storyboard, this interactive storyboard of this concept, and then now we want to share it out. And so sometimes you want to share to get it approved. So maybe we have a boss and we want our boss to take a look at it and give us some feedback. Or maybe we have a client that we're presenting the idea to. Or maybe we just think we've
Mm-hmm.
built something really cool and we want to share it on social media or something like that. So it's really a platform for collaborating and socializing an idea and getting it to the next to the next step. So we consider that pre-production. And by the way, this is how really successful mobile applications are built today. They usually prototype first with designers and creatives. And then once everybody kind of iterates in that pre-production workflow, when it's time to actually build the functioning application, there's a lot more refinement and a lot the whole company has aligned around this prototype. And then when it actually is built in production, when engineering gets involved, the idea is pretty well set, and they can more efficiently use that time. So what we're seeing is right now is if a big company or a brand or just someone has some sort of idea that they'd like to be able to work in 3D, they immediately find themselves getting into production workflows, like using Unity,
Mm-hmm.
doing some engineering, even if they went into the web stack, using something like A-Frame or WebAR. What you're going to find is those aren't made to be very lightweight collaborative prototyping environments, and we feel like that's the missing piece in the ecosystem that we're providing.
Speaking of AR tools, it seems every big company is interested in AR. Recently, Adobe announced their AR feature in their products. Autodesk also, I think, has an AR tool in its products. Amazon has Symmetry, and Facebook and Snapchat also have their own AR studio. How do you think startups can add value and differentiate themselves in this space?
Yeah, so I've looked at all those things, and
Sure.
they all, in my opinion, they all seem to be inspired by traditional workflows, and primarily coming out of video games. So, to be clear, I've been a Unity developer since version 1.5. I've been using Unity for well over 10 years. And for video game development and interactive production, it is the best iteration. That it's huge how much it disrupted people's ability to create interactive experiences.
Mm-hmm.
However, it was originally designed for making video games, and in particular, it was designed for engineering video games. And over time, they've gotten a little bit better about accommodating the other disciplines in that arrangement. Supporting artists and making more level designer type friendly features and functionality. But at the end of the day, Unity still very much is a video game development environment, and it's desktop based. And when I look at the other tools that you mentioned, some of these newer tools that are focused on outputting augmented reality or VR experiences, I find more times than not what they've taken the fundamentals of Unity and just focused it on that output. And
Mm-hmm.
what they've missed is that there's a whole population of people, a very large population of people that don't understand or just don't like to work in Unity, or they don't it doesn't fit their needs. So a lot of these tools are some of these more specialized tools. They are an easier or a more refined version of that kind of integrated development environment. And I think, to me, based on my experience, but kind of behind the scenes at MagicLeap, all of these make the fundamental assumption that people are going to be working on their laptop, and once in a while
Mm-hmm.
they're going to test their idea on device. And so we've taken the complete opposite approach. So what I would say differentiates us, and also most of those tools are focused on producing an application. They're not really catering to the pre-production prototyping concepting side of things. I think the idea is that they've made them accessible enough to where you could prototype in it. But I would argue that these new technologies are so unique. I think it's a mistake to creatively iterate on a traditional laptop for these new capabilities. So,
Mm-hmm.
so probably our most immediate differentiator that you would recognize is the fact that our design environment is actually in AR. So you're actually building your prototype visually, and you're walking around and you're using a mobile device because it gives you freedom of movement, and it gives you freedom of moving the camera and the perspective around without being kind of glued to a desktop. So that, to me, that's when I look at the kind of the landscape of current kind of AR and VR focused development tools. Um, Almost all of them are completely based on the desktop, and then maybe there's a couple that have a VR version of that, but our emphasis is on the AR version of that.
Ah, great. So you actually answered my next question already. So some people like Elon Musk and Meta CEO Meron Griffiths believe that it is more natural for us humans to create content in and design in 3D spaces like AR and VR. And you're saying actually that in Torch you actually do that,
Yes,
yeah?
yep, that's right. We actually started. I mean, we've been working on this for a couple of years now, and our first
Mm-hmm.
iteration was a VR based workflow because ARKit had not been announced and was not available. And
Yeah.
my co-founders and I, we have a deep background in AR, but VR at the time gave us PC VR in particular gave us the fully tracked hands and head, and we leveraged that to make working in 3D as intuitive as living in 3D is. And that was kind of our
Uh-huh.
idea. Now, when ARKit got announced, we immediately gravitated towards it because our platform, we had already architected the platform to be uh, agnostic to VR and AR. So we built an AR proof of concept of our product, and we got such strong feedback from it because it's portable, it's cheaper to get into, it's much more lends itself much more to collaboration with other people in the same space. So the feedback was overwhelming. So we actually deprioritized a VR workflow and have completely focused on the mobile AR version of that.
Aha, now I get it. So, doesn't that make it harder to create content? I believe that it will be more useful for artistic or reasons, to design in 3D, but in more serious designs like industrial use cases, wouldn't it be easier to just design it in a 2D environment?
No, I think especially with AR, there are things that you need to be able to see to understand how well they will work or how well they won't work. So, like for example, if I'm a professional designer and I can create 2D assets all day. I can make menus, I can make logos, and I want to
Hmm.
start working with those assets I've created in 3D. When you pull those into an AR environment, I would say the most immediate thing that you see is you realize, okay, I can put 2D elements in a 3D space, but now the user has full freedom of movement. So when I walk around to the side of this 2D thing, it actually disappears because it has no depth.
Yeah.
Being able to, I believe strongly in iterating from the point of view that your end user would also see this, right? And that's kind
Yeah.
of that pre-production prototyping mentality of let's iterate from how the end customer will see this. To your other question about is it possible to build something powerful enough to be informative? Because keeping in mind, our goal is not to have someone be able to build a full application within our product. Our goal is to have them to be informed enough about their concept that then when they do go build that application, they've got a lot more information. So just in other words, if I've built a functioning prototype in Torch, and I really love the direction it's headed, and I now want to actually build this as a application. I would export out of Torch into Unity or some other engine that's designed for production application development. So keeping in mind that we're kind of focusing on the prototyping level of complexity, what we do is we provide the designer different capabilities, fundamental capabilities like responding to user input, object behaviors, the ability to have multiple branching scenes in logic. I'm pretty proud. We've created an interface that actually allows you to build something that complex completely in AR on a mobile device. And it's pretty cool to see, even with just some fundamental interactivity and some control, you can actually communicate a fairly complex concept and actually build it very quickly as well. So enterprise is actually an ideal use case for us because if you have a company, let's say a very large enterprise that's trying to figure out how could our next product be an AR, or how do we even market? How do we use AR for marketing, which is a real common use case right now? And we actually give them the ability to explore those ideas without having to first go, hire an agency or contract Unity developers, or and that's what we're seeing is happening now. So and to me that's the friction. So if I'm a big company, I'm very successful in mobile, and I'm trying to be forward thinking and say, okay, how does my product work in this new spatial computing world? If the first thing somebody tells me is, well, before you can even see anything, you've got to spend several weeks with engineers and a very slow kind of visualization process, and it's very expensive. So we eliminate that. We basically say pretty much anyone with our design environment can build an interactive to communicate an overall concept and actually refine the concept with very, very little upfront knowledge or cost required.
Now that makes sense. That makes sense. So Paul, MagicLeap, I know you are still probably under NDAs, but
Yep.
can you tell us more about your experience with MagicLeap and tell
Yeah.
us what you think about their new announcements?
Yeah. So what there was a couple things that drew me to MagicLeap. One was obviously I've been an enthusiast of kind of this idea of augmented reality for a couple years prior to seeing their technology. I did see an opportunity to build a world-changing product, and I knew after talking to Roni, the CEO, and talking about the vision, I knew it was an opportunity to participate in something at a scale that is a very rare opportunity to get into. Um, what it afforded me was the ability to think way ahead of, right now, even to this day, there's technology that people have not yet been able to work with or see. So they haven't yet started thinking about what's possible with it. Well, I got to work with that years ago. And so, we often make the joke, I returned from the future. When but the truth is behind the scenes, when you have access to this technology, in particular, me being involved heavily on the application and software development tool side, you have the luxury of thinking ahead and saying, well, I'm past the mind blown phase of, oh my gosh, I can't believe I saw what I just saw. And now it's a daily conversation about, well, what are people going to do with it? What are companies going to do with it? How does this change the world? So you kind of get into this, it just becomes your world, that this future that even today most people haven't experienced. It was a part of our everyday behind the scenes. So so that, to me, that was one of the biggest advantages it gave me. I still have lots of friends there, and I was really proud when they announced the SDK at GDC this year, the Game Developers Conference. A lot of what we had, the foundation we had laid for the SDK By the way, one of my co-founders, Josh Faust at Torch, was the lead engineer on that team. And
Uh-huh.
what Josh and I kind of laid out as a foundation a couple years ago, I was really pleased to see a lot of that had been kept. And so when I look at the public SDK that's out now, I can definitely see our influence on it, and I'm really proud that there were some concepts in there we introduced. We were even back then before Torch, we were thinking about how to make developing in 3D more accessible, how to make these cutting edge technologies more accessible. So that's why you'll see in the MagicLeap SDK, there's things like what we call zero iteration. And the idea behind
Mm-hmm.
zero iteration was right now to work with to even build a mobile app in a game engine, you have to build it, test it on device, and especially with these devices that have sensors and these alternative display systems, you really need to test it on device. But
Mm-hmm.
if you have to make a build and copy it over to the device every time just to take a look at it, that time eats away at when you could be more creative. And so, we placed a pretty high priority on what we called zero iteration. And the goal was to reduce the iteration time, the time it took you to make a change in your project to seeing it on the device. The goal was to get that to zero. And so that was the concept that I was happy to see that survived all the changes over the past couple years. And then the other ones were alternative ways of working with it. So the simulator project that they released with the SDK, it didn't exist when I was there. But what we had done was made the SDK where it would support these alternative device stacks to allow people to start building these spatial experiences without having to actually have immediate access to the hardware, because we knew it would be a little while before the hardware would be available in quantity. So I'm pretty happy about how that went. And then I think I can't fully take credit for this, but the thing that got us the responsibility of building the SDK was communicating internally to the company. Hey, yeah, we're gonna build this product, which we all know now is the MagicLeap One, is this piece of hardware.
Mm-hmm.
But and we also know that this product is going to have a third party ecosystem of developers building applications and experiences for it. Before we ship the actual headset, we've got to get the SDK out there to developers, and we've got to support them, and we've got to give them examples, and we've got to give them things to think about. All these years of working behind the scenes and learning these little tricks, we need to communicate. We need to give that all those advantages to our third party developers. So that's that I'm really happy to see that they've started doing that in the past few weeks. They're doing these weekly streams. They're starting to provide more and more
Yeah.
example projects. So I can't claim to be, but I'd like to think I had some influence in how that's coming out.
Sure. Sure, sure. Great. So, Paul, one of the most hyped terms in AR space right now is AR Cloud. What do you think about that, especially with new features of AR Core and AR Kit with multi-user?
Hmm.
What do you think about AR Cloud and how is it important for AR in future?
Yeah. So just to reiterate, our product is a collaborative augmented reality design environment. So we believe having people on their individual devices but experiencing the same experience together in the same physical space is a key feature of mobile augmented reality. And to make that
Mm-hmm.
really happen well, AR Cloud could really smooth out that user experience. So what we do in the meantime is we have some user experience around having people coordinate where they are in a project and in the physical space. Um, for us, AR Cloud offers the promise of being able to like for the devices just to know about each other. And so if I say, oh, I've created a project and now I've shared it with you and I want you to jump into it,
Mm-hmm.
you just do that. You don't need to say, well, where did you place the project in the space or something like that.
Yeah.
Beyond the multi-user and the peer-to-peer stuff, there's also persistence. So that
Mm-hmm.
is also interesting to us because I could maybe say, hey, I've left you a project in the office over in the corner, and you launch your app and you get into the design environment and it actually shows you where the project is. So for us, it's actually very beneficial to our product experience, and I do think it enables the pieces of mobile AR that are necessary for consumers to really want it. And that, to me, when I think about Air Cloud, just to kind of go over that, I think about multi-user shared experiences,
Mm-hmm.
persistence in physical locations, and sensing of the world, or sometimes people call it reconstruction. So the ability to have mapped out a room. We know its floor, walls, furniture, all of its general information. What you can do with that data set is, for one, if somebody's already scanned a physical environment with their device, uh, other people can benefit from that upfront scan, so they don't have to rescan the room for every person every time they walk in. So
Mm-hmm.
that's a positive user experience advantage. But even deeper than that is, if you do have that data set, you can do some really interesting things with it. You could analyze it and say, okay, I actually believe this person is in a conference room right now. And how might applications respond? How might the operating system respond to that? And then there's also another key thing, and this is a very mobile AR specific thing, because you're looking at this 3D content in the physical world through a camera feed. You don't, and looking at it on a screen, you don't have the stereoscopic cues that you do with say, a head worn device. So
Mm-hmm.
your sense of depth perception is purely based off shadows and occlusions. So, in other words, if I'm looking at my conference room through the camera feed on my phone, and I want to place a virtual object in that room, if it casts shadows, if the virtual object casts shadows on the physical spaces, that's a real strong indicator to me of where that object is in virtually in the physical environment. If I
Exactly.
if I push that object way far away and down below the table, if it properly disappears behind the table, that is also a cue to me that, okay, this thing is below the table and beyond it.
Mm-hmm.
So that type of that it and for and that type of information and that type of cues is also extremely important for wearables, because it
Mm-hmm.
gives an even stronger sense that that virtual object is in the physical location. But for mobile AR, it's almost critical, because if you don't have occlusion and shadows, it's real easy to have an object that you've pushed really far away, and you can't really tell, is it at a certain point you can't tell if it's just tiny, very small, or if you've actually pushed
Yeah.
it really far away. And the only way, without shadows or occlusion, to really figure out to resolve that, to figure out, is
Exactly.
you have to get up and walk around. You have to walk towards it, and and so you'll see people place an object and then they'll move the device really close to it, and what they're doing is they're calibrating. They're basically saying, is that where I think it is? Because it could also be, I may have thought I put this model of a puppy dog on the floor, but I've actually placed it well below the floor, and then I've scaled it
Mm-hmm.
way up to try to make it look like it's on the floor. If I do that standing still, I'll think I've perfectly positioned it, and then the minute you walk around or move to a different perspective, you realize, oh, this doesn't look right. So to me, sorry, that was a bit of a tangent on AR Cloud, but to me, AR Cloud is, for mobile AR, is our best shot at getting the data we need to be able to create those kind of next level cues in the content.
Yeah. Your example of occlusion under the desk reminded me of MagicLeap demo of a robot
Hmm.
under the desk, and you could sense occlusion really well on that demo.
Yeah, and I think the thing about that particular demo, I was with the company at the time that
Uh
came
huh.
out. I believe that was the first time we actually recorded through the optics
Yeah, that
of a
was the
device.
first demo I see.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so the interesting thing about that is the occlusion that was demonstrated there was more for the benefit of the video than anything,
Uh huh.
because if you're actually wearing the headset and you're looking at it through the optics, you kind of naturally know where that's a part of what one of Magic Leap's current advantages is when you look at an object through their optics, you have a really strong sense of where it is in your physical environment. Now, the occlusion cue still helps with that quite a bit, but it's
Mm-hmm.
not as critical as it is on a video feed or a mobile AR video feed.
Uh huh. Great. So, Paul, as we said, big companies entering this field, and every big company like Google, Apple, Facebook, Microsoft, Snapchat, they are working on augmented reality, and many believe that AR will be the next big thing. Who do you think has the best shot among these companies? And also, do startups you think have still a chance in this field?
Yes. So right now, even for mobile AR, to make it work really, really well, you really need access to the lower level hardware. So,
Mm-hmm.
the reason why um, Apple was able to release ARKit, and the reason why ARKit works so well is because Apple has control of the hardware. They know exactly what components are being used in the devices, and they can control. Basically, when you're creating when you're fusing together all these sensors, right? You've got cameras, you've
Mm-hmm.
got IMUs and gyroscopes. When you're fusing together these data streams from these different systems, you have to have a calibration, and that calibration is how you resolve all these things to an accurate tracking or an accurate positioning. And so the in the near term, the performance requirements are so high to accomplish that, that really the people that control the chips and firmware and the OS have the advantage on the actual platforms themselves, the device
Mm-hmm.
platforms. So it'd be really hard. There are a few companies doing it that are creating like a completely third party augmented reality tracking stack or something. But I think a lot of those people have actually moved to AR Cloud, and I think that's a
Uh-huh.
good idea. So with respect to the hardware, people will still have an advantage for a time to come in terms of how hard they can push the capabilities of the
Mm-hmm.
hardware. However, the opposite of that, and to the second part of your question, these companies are also beholden to their ecosystems. So you know, let's yeah, I would say the biggest surprise that came out of Google I/O this year for me was when AR Core was announced to have iOS support. I thought that was a really good
Mm-hmm.
move on Google's part, because
Yeah, exactly.
a company like ours, we'd now be tempted to build to AR Core because now we get Android and iOS compatibility, and on top of that, we get access to their AR Cloud persistent anchors system.
Yeah.
But you have to remember that all these companies, AR is too small of a market right now for them to do anything but figure out how this fits into their existing roadmap. It'll be very rare that you'll see any of the companies you named putting out something that's just for the greater good of 3D applications and spatial computing, right?
Uh-huh.
If they put out an example project, it's going to be an example project for either their hardware or their platform. If they they're constantly looking for advantages for their platform that they hope will create the right combination of compelling experiences that'll capture most of the consumer market. Because once you've done that, the developers will come to you because you have the most audience. So I think the advantages for startups right now, and I mean, this is the approach we're taking, is to be very collaborative and be very agnostic to any particular technology. It's such early days right now that by us giving someone, giving a creative UX designer the capability to build an interactive 3D prototype, that's in these early days pretty good enough. Like what we've talked to tons and tons of people that represent that demographic, and they just don't have that capability at all. So there's a lot of opportunity around being really flexible, not over committing to any particular set of functionality on the AR side and or the VR side, and just being very flexible and being agnostic to all the different, because there's just going to be lots and lots of devices with all kinds of different
Mm-hmm.
capabilities out there, and at the end of the day, you're going to have to go for the lowest common denominator. And then I would, and to that point, I mean, that's why we have chosen to focus on mobile augmented reality in the near term, because there's just so many devices in the market right now that can run this type of product. And
Exactly.
I had a little bit of a tweet storm a week or so ago about that, where we can no longer make excuses about there's not enough hardware out there. And I think
Yeah.
VR had that excuse for a while, and you had people saying the paradox of, well, we can't sell more hardware until there's more compelling applications and reasons to use the hardware. And then you have the
Mm-hmm.
applications and developers saying, well, we can't really justify building full blown products on top of a hardware stack that has very few actual users. So it was kind of almost a deadlock between what's going to happen there. Uh, we're kind of seeing that now with AR, right? People are saying, well, when's the next headset coming out?
Uh-huh.
When's that going to be available? And I say you can learn most of a large bulk of the fundamentals you need to create compelling experiences on a wearable AR device. You can earn that knowledge on mobile AR today and have a very
Mm-hmm.
large audience that you could cater to. So I see it as that transitional that's an opportunity. This is our opportunity to demonstrate uh, that we can build a very complex product in AR that has utility and productivity value on a mobile
Mm-hmm.
device. And then at that point, once we've shown the world that you can actually use AR to get work done, and you can actually, and we've shown the development community you can build fairly complex applications on top of this stuff. We're kind of setting ourselves up for the next progression, which is, well, people will want to be able to do this on headsets, and
Yeah,
that's more
exactly.
consumers. So to me, the advantage for startups right now is having that mentality of what's the market I can capture today, and how does that lead me to a bigger market down the road.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So on type of AR applications, there's a debate right now about whether AR should be a feature of the application on top of application's core, like for example Snapchat, or AR itself has the power and potential and can be the core of the application itself. What do you think about that?
We are seeing both, and I think they both have merit. So, in other words, um, our our product is built completely within the camera. So
Mm-hmm.
when you launch Torch, you are always in the camera.
Uh-huh.
And so for us, it's a core. It's the default mode of working with our platform is through the camera. But what we're seeing, but that's because we're building this from scratch. We believe in this future, and
Mm-hmm.
we're all in on it. But alternatively, for our customers, keeping in mind that a lot of our customers do a lot of existing traditional mobile app development, they're trying to figure out ways they can incorporate AR functionality into their existing app. So this is a completely random example. I have no relationship with the company, but if you look at like Uber, for example, and so Uber is a very widely used applicant. It's a mobile app based product, and you could imagine how AR would be a really powerful feature for Uber. I've called my car, and while I'm looking, I'm on a busy street,
Mm-hmm.
and most of the time people kind of stretch and step out into the street to try to see if their car is coming to pick them up. With
Exactly.
augmented reality, I could hold up my camera, I can look around, and I can see my car on the street, and I could actually walk up to it without having to read license plates and things like that. Um, so, if I'm the Uber product manager and I see this opportunity, hey, this could be an advantage for us. If we're competing with Lyft, let's have an AR component. That maybe people be more likely to use Uber than Lyft because we have this capability to make it easier to find the car on a really busy street. But how do I fold that into this existing application? How do I even visualize what that might look like and share it with internally in the company to get approval to even consider this idea? And so that's
Mm-hmm.
where we see our ideal use case for us. But we do see a lot of people thinking that way now. So there was a really good presentation by Tony Parisi from Unity at Augmented World Expo. I just watched it this morning, so it's fresh in my head. And he essentially said the same thing. What they're seeing is incremental movement towards mobile AR. So people taking existing mobile applications and trying to figure out how this functionality enhances their app. And we're also seeing early signs of, we need more data to back this up, but we're seeing signs of if you have an AR feature in your app, it creates much more engagement, and it brings people back to your application. So in a world where you're competing for everyone's attention all the time, engagement and getting people back into your application is really important. So we believe that AR would be a really compelling reason to do that. So we cater to both of those use cases. Somebody's building something from scratch and they want to start playing out some ideas, but also if somebody just wanted to kind of test out a small piece that they could then share to say, hey, this is how this could work in our application. But yeah, I don't. I think both are the right way to go. We're seeing it both ways.
So one last question, Paul. What do you think will be the killer app for AR, and when will be AR's Eiffel Moment?
Well, I think Torch will be. That's. I mean, yeah. I think. Um, I don't like to usually talk in terms of specific, killer app. I think
Yeah.
what I look at is what caused the majority of the population to move from desktop to web, and what caused the majority of the population to move from web to mobile. I think there were a few key applications that showed them the utility, but ultimately, my personal take on the smartphone really took off when it had the capability to do fairly reasonable web browsing, email,
Mm-hmm.
and GPS navigation. To me, none of those things were new uh, products unto themselves, but doing it in a mobile device was, the consumer market had already validated that we like to browse the web, we like to use email, and we like to
Yeah.
do navigation. But the phone made it where you could do it with this pocket computer, and it helped people justify moving to these devices. And then
Mm-hmm.
gaming is always and entertainment is always a big factor in those things as well. I can remember the first time I saw a real 3D game on a mobile phone, and I was working in the game industry at the time. It was just kind of a transformative experience. So I think I joked that Torch is one of those, but I really do believe that we're going to show everyone the types of applications that are possible in AR beyond what we see today, which is a lot of social content creation. So Snapchat,
Sure.
Instagram, World Lens and selfie filters type of stuff
Yeah.
is, I mean, they're super fun. I use them all the time. I think I'm excited for us to be able to show the world. Oh, I always just thought this was something you do in Snapchat, but now I can see how I could
Mm-hmm.
actually get work done with this technology.
Yeah.
And
More functional use cases.
yep, absolutely. So I think I tend to not over, yeah, and probably evident by this whole conversation, I tend to not talk too much about the entertainment and gaming use cases. For one, they're kind of
Mm-hmm.
assumed. Like interactive 3D has its roots in video games, and all these tools that we've talked about have some sort of DNA that traces back to video games. So video games and entertainment experiences, those are easy to demonstrate. I think the harder part is to demonstrate, why do I want a pair of crazy, holographic glasses? What am I going to do with it besides play a game? Because that's not enough for me. How can I get work done?
Yeah.
Does it make me a faster, better person, personally and professionally? And so, to me, so I don't like to point out any particular killer app, but those are the elements of, I think, what people mean when they say killer app. Are what are those most compelling use cases that people are like, I gotta have that, or I couldn't do this any other way. Back to the smartphone example, I couldn't have sent an email from my car any other way reasonably before I had the smartphone. I couldn't Google search any other way reasonably while I'm on the beach. so
Yeah.
that's the way I like to think about it, is in terms of utility and demonstration of capabilities that they don't always have to necessarily be completely new concepts. They just have to take advantage of what the capabilities that let you do something in a way you couldn't have done before. And I think that's the key.
Yeah, I totally agree. Well, thank you very much, Paul, for joining the All Things XR podcast.
Yes, thanks for having me. I'm honored.